It's on now? Okay. Yeah, maybe let's see if we got it and we can get moving, I think. So welcome everyone to the May 31st MVP TAG meeting. So thanks everyone for joining. Let's see, for I guess kick things off, we got Ted Clifton on the line, and then I don't see Brad, but Ted recently got appointed to the tag. So Ted, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself um, to the group here, but thank you for joining.
Well, thank you. Hopefully I'll be able to keep up with everything because I'm a pretty busy guy, but I design and build zero energy homes. I've been doing that for close to 20 years now. On the ventilation side, I was one of a few who was invited by the EPA when they were trying to put together the Indoor Air Plus program. They asked me to beta test it on one of our homes in 2003 to 2004 timeframe. So I go back a long ways with high performance and especially in the ventilation and heating end of things.
Great, thank you. And yeah, I appreciate you volunteering your time for this. And I think it's going to be super helpful. And like just to maybe it doesn't need to be said, but you're representing home builders on the tag, correct? Awesome. All right. Okay. With that, is there anyone else that would like to introduce themselves, either on the tag or otherwise? I see we got a couple people in the audience that aren't tag members, but feel free to unmute and go for it. Justin, good morning.
Good morning. Hey, Ben. Brad is trying to get on the deal. He's having trouble getting into the Zoom link right now, but I just talked to him. He's trying to get in.
Okay, great. Okay, so hopefully you can join soon, and yeah, if he's able to get in, maybe you can do a quick intro at that point. But yeah, thanks for the update. All right, with that, yeah, let's go ahead and do a quick roll call. Oh, never mind. Sorry, I see Brad just popped on. So Brad McCutcheon, we're just doing intros. I don't know if you can hear us, if you got your audio on, but if you want, maybe just give a quick intro if you feel like it. But you've also been recently added to the tag. And if not, I'll just mention that Brad is, oh, there you go. Brad representing mechanical contractors, I believe, or HVAC contractors. And I'm not hearing you, Brad, if you're talking. I don't know if others are. All right, well, I guess let's keep going. Krista, can we go ahead and start the roll call?
Okay, Ben Amura.
Here.
Justin Borgo.
Here.
Steve Hart. Janice Goucher.
Here.
Ray Shipman. Laura Boyd.
Here.
Salesh Desai.
Yes, here.
Ted Clifton.
Here.
Ken Nelson.
Here.
Ian Casey.
I'm here and I'll have to drop at 12:30.
Bill Masaki.
Here.
Steve Simpson, Brad McCutcheon, looks like you still haven't gotten your sound worked out. Harpreet Sandhu, Kevin Duell,
Here. I will also need to drop at 12:30.
Alexandra Boris,
Here.
Jonathan Jones, David Price.
Here.
So we do have a quorum.
All right, fantastic. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item, and that's to review and approve the agenda here. So I don't know if it's pretty pretty simple agenda. So if someone can offer a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Okay, so let's get back into it. I think this is where we left off, and just to remind everyone, right now we're reviewing the existing state amendments for the International Mechanical Code, and I think we're in Chapter 5. So we're reviewing and providing recommendations based on staff recommendations to retain or otherwise change what was in for the previous code cycle. So Krista, please take
Okay.
it away.
So this was a new amendment in 2012 and just specified that the fire enclosure or the duct enclosure didn't need to exceed a 2-hour fire rating based on the fact that that would be the most required in any circumstance. So they didn't want people to require a 3-hour rating on something that would normally require a 1-hour rating or a 2-hour rating. So, and then the additional model code change, adding in the specifications that we're talking solely about grease ducts.
Gotcha. I noticed when I was looking at this one, Krista, I think like the amendment text kind of got shuffled or something. It doesn't read exactly like if you read it, it says 2 hours, but shall not less than 1 hour. I think
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be 2 hours, but shall not be less than 1 hour. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then I guess one other question I had when I was looking at this does grease duct need to be italicized when we're looking at, like, because it's a new defined term?
Yeah, we can probably do that. It wasn't italicized in the
In the model
advanced
code?
edition of the 2024 code that I got, but I'm
Okay.
guessing that they will have it italicized at some point, so I can do that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it might be an editorial thing for later, but okay. Thank you. All right. Anyone have any other items to discuss for this, or want to move to retain it?
Make a motion to accept.
And retain the existing state amendment for section 506.3.11.
All right, great. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
And Kevin, so we talked about this last time. Are you filling in the primary spot this week at this point?
Yeah, Sandy isn't here right now.
Sandy, okay,
so-
Sandy, that's
Yeah.
right. Okay, perfect. Okay.
Thanks for clarifying though.
Yep, thanks for confirming. Okay, great. We got a motion and a second. Any discussion from TAG or other any other member or people present? With that, take a quick vote. All those in favor of retaining the state amendment to 506.3.11, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Thank you.
Okay, this next one adds a table just specifying what type of hood you would need with a domestic appliance in various occupancies based on what's being done.
And yeah, this has been around for a while. Anyone have any items to discuss for this section? Or any other points to discuss for this area or how it's being applied?
Is there a clear pathway for defining residential versus commercial, or I just haven't seen that? So that we don't get into what is what in the field.
I believe there is, I don't know if anyone has the references off the top of their head, but I think you
I
have
believe
here in the
it is
section,
defined somewhere though, yes?
yeah, like it. So you have the domestic cooking appliances defined in section 505, as noted in the last sentence of this, the paragraph before the table, and that will define for domestic cooking and how they're utilized. And this is really to define what type of hood is needed for those appliances used in a commercial setting. And I know this definitely gets,
It can get weedy. And
yeah.
I say that because there's also a difference in the capture efficiencies required between a gas and electric. So there's a lot of nuances. Perhaps not so much in the commercial side, but on the residential side.
Mhm.
On the residential side, there's also this change in what you need to do for makeup air when you hit 400 CFM, and it could be confusing, I think. And again, I apologize because I'm new to this process here, but and I don't know what's on other parts of the codes other than what we're looking at right now. But we have our type 1 and our type 2 hoods, and those parts are fairly clear in commercial what they mean. But if somebody, well, sees the language just on this table that says residential hood, what does that mean exactly?
I think is tested by the equipment agencies, manufacturer, and labeled as such as residential type or commercial type equipment.
Would it be helpful to see the definition in 505 or elsewhere?
I think it would be.
Yeah, Krista, would you be able to pull that section up from,
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to here.
so I don't,
Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to take us into the weeds on this. I just know that I've come across that in the residential side on capture efficiencies, hood designs, type 1, type 2.
yeah, and in the, like in the residential side of, like in chapter 4, there definitely is some more clarity on the amount of exhaust and makeup air required for the different appliance types.
Right, right.
I think what's intended in this section that we're just looking at is the type 1 and type 2 have to do with the fire suppression requirements or fire protection, fire issues as opposed to other ventilation issues, and it's not clear in that language.
Well, then the other thing is when you look at that selection, that area where you have both that are acceptable. So if you have both that are acceptable, now you run into the situation where if there is a fire event, a residential does not have a fire suppression strategy.
Mhm.
Commercial or a type 2 would. So how do you differentiate, for example, a child care facility where you're boiling water? How do you define that? Again, I'm just trying to eliminate the confusion in the field that occurs, and then we get all this pushback from. So that's exhaust ducts. Let's look here.
I mean, 505.2 gets into equipment.
So it's got to have the UL 507. That's no problem. Apply with UL 507. Domestic cooking, which is a residential. So it doesn't refer to the type 2 or
No, it wouldn't because this is
Because
residential.
that would be.
Yeah,
it's
yeah, that would be in 507 for the type 1 and type 2.
If the wattage is over 6 kW, then do we recommend a type 2?
Well, I guess the question, maybe we could, if there's a way to define a threshold, right? Is there a way to define a threshold where it migrates from type 1 to type 2 or residential to type 2?
Well, type 1 and type 2 is depending on grease and smoke
Yep.
and anything other than that.
Okay. All right. Well, my apologies. I don't want to get us into the weeds on this. I just,
Yeah,
Well-
and it's definitely something that, like, if there's a good approach to make a change in the future, we can definitely, as working through the tag process, we can look at future code proposals
sure.
as part of this, and we can always today like take action to retain, like recommending retaining the state amendment, and then we're like looking towards the future to make additional modifications. So it's not something we need to. This isn't our last chance to improve the code or modify it, if it makes sense.
And as far as getting into the weeds, this is a code tag after all, so I figure we're going to get into the topsoil. I mean, this is about as nerdy as it gets, right?
Yeah, that is the purpose of what we're doing, is to nerd out on this stuff. So yeah,
and I'll
definitely.
say on the other perspective, not having this table, we don't like, take Oregon doesn't have this table, so it's really up to the every project has to go through the AHJ to determine, are you doing, or what are you doing there? And the requirement is just to put up a sign that says you can't do anything except boil water if you're going to use a residential hood or a type 1 hood or type 2 hood rather. So it's helpful here to just get that up front, I think.
I'll just chime in on this table. So it is in the, I mean, this is the commercial, code that we're dealing with. And so, you know, these type of spaces, church and mainly like these amenity community rooms, oftentimes, you know, in the past, you'll see the client and the architect specifying like a residential hood that they'll put into these spaces. And so this table has been helpful to point to the client, you know, to specify the need of, you know, whether, you know, just because they're putting in a residential hood, you know, oftentimes depending on the processes that are happening in those amenity spaces, they may need, you know, basically may be forced into needing to use a type 1 hood. So anyway, I just thought I would chime in as far as, you know, I definitely support retaining this existing state amendment, this table. It's been, it's used quite often when it comes to those commercial spaces.
Is it fair to say that this table applies only to buildings that are built under the IBC, whereas buildings built under the IRC, this wouldn't apply?
Definitely.
Yeah, that's, I mean, yeah, it's
I would agree.
used for commercial purposes. So if I mean, if there's a building built under residential code that would not fall into the typical definition for like dwelling units or other things, it may get a little bit gray, I would say, but my understanding of how this is typically applied is for commercial spaces under the IBC that are using these types of appliances.
Well, the space is listed except the dormitory or some sort of small 3-story boarding room may go to residential. All others are like commercial type.
Mm-hmm. Or, I mean, you could have a daycare space or something like that, like a home daycare, but that also gets into if it's a high occupancy or something like that.
Yeah, adult family homes are one of the things I'm thinking about, where they, you know, they're typically built under the IRC as single family residences with extra bedrooms, but they do have a kitchen that is a residential kitchen in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm certainly not opposed to keeping this. I think that charts like this do make it easy for many, but they can lead into gray areas for others. I mean, just by type of space definition, what one person considers a daycare could be completely different from what somebody else, or dormitory or boarding home or nursing home. All those definitions are subject to interpretation to some degree, but I'm totally good with keeping this. I don't want to.
What if we added the word commercial after the word following up in the title? Type of hood required for domestic cooking appliances in the following commercial spaces, or some other similar addition so that it's more clear where this applies.
Well, and that would be actually probably a good thing, because if you look at 507.1.2, under the title, it's domestic cooking appliances used for commercial purposes. So to continue on that line, commercial spaces, and would maybe make sense.
But I think that would confuse issues because there is no term of commercial spaces. That would just, I think since it's that section that references the table, that it is implicit in that reference, and
Okay.
before spaces would not be.
Actually, okay, that makes sense. If you look at sub sentence A down there, commercial cooking appliances, they define that as commercial cooking appliances. So
That's true.
okay, I'm good with that. I mean, that makes sense too.
Yeah, and I think like if some of you that want to maybe take it at like offline and maybe look at this a little bit deeper, I think that would be awesome to do. So if I don't know if anyone wants to volunteer to kind of form a little small working group to look at this some further, as like we could move today to retain the existing amendment and then work on some proposed changes for future meetings.
Okay, I'll make a motion to retain it. We can have a different motion to do something else.
I'll second the motion.
I need to read out the numbers though, and they're gone now.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back there.
Sorry.
I just brought up the wrong document. Hang on. There we go.
Okay, so a motion to retain existing amendments to section 503, excuse me, 507.1.2.
I'll second the motion.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? All right, so motion is to retain existing state amendments to section 507.1.2. I assume that includes the table, Krista?
Yes.
Okay. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Hey,
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And then I think, Shailesh, you kind of hinted at this, but Seattle has some additional definitions on some of this stuff that if anyone's looking at this would be maybe helpful to reference, and you might have some experience with how that language got developed as well, I would say. Or how it's being used at least.
We added a note for 6 kW as a total. When it is higher input, then we definitely wanted a type 2 hood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Seattle has like an additional table for a bunch of this stuff, but it for commercial cooking appliances. So I think there's a little bit more granularity if you look at the Seattle City Code. This. Okay, let's keep going for now. But thank you for that discussion on that.
And this kind of goes along with the table allowing a type 2 hood in a group R2 occupancy with less than 16 residents.
Was there any more to the rationale, Krista, or is that just like the parenthesis just ended?
There probably was at the time.
It's a limited cooking.
Is the idea that it's basically a giant house?
Correct. Yeah, I think like in the rationale there it was mentioning boarding homes.
Yeah.
For R2 occupancy.
To me, the language kind of sounds like it could allow for no hood. Is that just my interpretation?
It is a little bit interesting that all it is specifying that the type 1 hood is not required, but there might be something indicating where a type 1 hood is not required, that you would still need some sort of hood for exhaust.
Yeah, my understanding is you start at a type 1 requirement at that, the beginning of 507. If a type 1 isn't required, you keep reading and you would land in the type 2, and likely that would be applicable.
Okay.
I think what it says, or the way I see it, is that even though with the 16 or less people cooking, there may be some smoke generated or some grease generated, but it's not required to have type 1 hood. Now, it will generate odor, it will generate steam, whatever, and then type 2 hood is still required.
Looks like there's an implicit understanding that a boarding home wouldn't have extra heavy duty cooking appliances, which I think makes sense. You're probably not going to have a deep fat fryer in your boarding house.
Yeah,
But that's an
yeah,
assumption.
I mean, the exception really gives an out to any R2 occupancy with this meeting that qualification to it doesn't really matter what appliance they might have or what kind of cooking they're doing. They would be able to avoid a type 1 hood in that case.
I mean, I'd almost want to add, I know that's not our purpose right here, is to make additions to this. We're just accepting or denying or whatever, but something about, not more than 16 residents using light duty appliances, or something like that. But I don't know if we have that latitude. I think that's a code change proposal, right?
Yeah, that would be a code change proposal, because I think that kind of differs from the original intent of this
Yeah.
proposal.
And maybe that's just unnecessary meddling, but I don't know. Could you have a boarding house with a medium duty appliance?
I've seen houses that have commercial applications. It can be painful. And I've seen, I have a project in Texas right now where they don't put range hoods in, period.
Whoa.
It's just blows your mind. And it's all good.
Wow.
All right, so yeah, it definitely seems like there's potentially some more action to be taken here, but I don't know if anyone wants to offer a motion to retain this for now, and kind of noting stuff that where we want to revisit.
I don't know. I'm kind of still struggling with the language. As I can't remember who mentioned it, but it does look like you can not use, and then instead of saying not be required, perhaps we could just defer to what is required.
Right. So I guess, Krista, like we would be able to today provide, like for what we're doing for the report, we could provide a recommendation to not retain the state amendment. Or could we also provide alterations to the language, assuming it doesn't have a significant impact?
Typically, if there was going to be an alteration to the language, it would require a new code change proposal.
Right. Okay.
Typically, the only modifications are to make it work with revised language in the model code for that edition, which
Gotcha.
isn't present in this particular instance.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
so
with that,
I don't want to stifle discussion on it, but yeah, it's got understanding what the goal is for this
Yeah.
initial review.
Okay.
And I can dig out the original proposal, but it would take some work. I'd have to go into another system to do that, so I can't really do that at the meeting here.
That's fair. Well, I mean,
Let's keep it. It's all good.
and can our recommendation include the desire, or it'd be like other comments to say, yeah, there you go.
How's that?
Great.
Make the motion to retain.
Existing state amendment for section 507.2.
Would,
I'll second that.
All right, so motion is second. Ted, did you have any comments?
yes,
on that?
please, can we discuss for just a minute?
Yep.
I was noticing that this exception is phrased in the negative. And if we simply turned it around and phrased it in the positive, so that we could say a type 2 hood can be permitted in a group R2 occupancy with not more than 16 residents. So it's not changing the nature, it's merely changing it from a negative wording to a positive wording.
Yeah, I think it's still potentially changing the requirement because yeah, like Krista, you just scrolled up to the table. So boarding home
Oh,
is one of the categories here. And if you're in the first type of cooking for boiling, steaming, or warming, it would be type 2. And then I guess yeah, roasting, pan frying. There's a conflict here. I'm actually noticing
yeah.
between that table and this exception. So I guess, Krista, in that case, if we're noticing that there's some conflicting amendments right now, do you think it would make more sense to potentially not retain this and revise it? Or do you think that would also still,
I think that would still require a code change proposal.
okay.
Yeah, that's true.
And it would take some wordsmithing and some time to come
Yeah.
up with something to refer to the previous table. Or,
What
you
is the
know,
conflict? I didn't, maybe show me where
And
the.
maybe it's not a conflict because this
It-
is giving you more of a, so the exception to 507.2 is requiring a type 1 hood shall not be required in group R2 with less or not more than 16 residents. And then the table in 507.1.2 is requiring type 1 for like grease producing cooking or smoke or
Oh,
grease
I see.
producing.
So it just because it doesn't say 16 people.
Yeah, so
Right.
maybe that's where you kind of get out of the type 1 situation there, assuming it's R2 occupancy.
Yeah, I read that is that this exception is just giving more information.
Yeah. So maybe, yeah, kind of back to Ted, your comment, this might be using the table as well as this exception together is required to get the full definition of what's required for that type of space. So, so there's a motion on the table. I want to make sure we're honoring that. So, any other discussion? We want to.
The only other thing I'll mention is in that table, it says, type 2 for condition, type 2, type 1. And if this exception's used for not using the type 1, there's still a type 2 requirement in that table.
Yep.
Right.
I was just looking at the R2 and the residents, and in the building code, an R2 boarding house is 16 or more residents, more than 16. So technically there is no R2 that would have less than 16 residents. It's a group R3 that has less than 16 residents. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's, at least that's how the building code has it. It has, boarding houses with 16 or fewer occupants is an R3. So that they would never need a type 1 in this situation because it wouldn't be a R2.
So maybe we just need to get rid of this exception because it's in conflict with lots of things.
there not other types of facilities that would be considered R2 and could have fewer than 16? Like a fraternity, for example, I'm seeing is one possibility.
Yeah, the thing that keeps popping up in my mind is residential treatment facilities.
Yeah, I wouldn't get stuck on the boarding homes piece because that's not actually in the code language.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good point. It's in the rationale that was probably driving this at one point, but as it's written, it's not part of the exception.
This R2 have 2 kitchen in one building, or more than 2 kitchen, but each kitchen cooks only less than 16 per people.
Well, there is a motion that can always have a nay vote, I guess.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess like with the motion on the table, I don't know if anyone wants to offer amendment to the motion based on discussion, or if we want to just move on to vote on it and see if we want to retain this for now.
And can I ask from a practical standpoint, if we were to not retain this and then we didn't follow through with making a code change, would that be a problem?
The problem is there's no underlying model code change that impacts this, and at this stage, it would require a code change proposal to take action on or to do something against what the council has previously adopted, since, they are the body and not the tag.
Well, and I guess to be clear,
Just kind
we
of a
aren't taking this
hierarchy thing.
out. We're just making a recommendation, right? So the council's going to do what it's going to do.
Yeah, and Christy, could we provide the recommendation to not retain, and with the understanding there would be a proposal for new language introduced? And that would be what we would include in the report.
I'm a bit uncomfortable with it, but I suppose we could make a recommendation to, but
Yeah, otherwise, like, yeah, it gets yeah, I'm kind of getting the sense like what other recourse do we have at this stage within the tag?
it really would take a code change proposal.
Mhm.
But
Well, I mean, if the tag makes a recommendation and the council acknowledges it and says, no, we're going to keep it or whatever, it'll be what it will be, right? The code is going to remain until the council makes a change to it.
I was curious, did anybody ask interpretation on this particular exception?
I don't believe there's been an interpretation request on this.
Okay, so there is, maybe people don't have issue with this.
It's a good question, Sellers, because this has been around since 2009, so it's been through many code cycles.
Yeah, my feeling is that our responsibility as a tag, and again, I'm the new guy here, but our responsibility is to nerd out on things like this. And when we find not just one, but 2 conflicts with other parts of code right here, it's our responsibility to call that out and bring it forward to the council.
Yeah, and Chris, I don't know if any of the other tags have run into similar issues or discoveries when they've been reviewing existing state amendments. But yeah, I think we want to try to move things forward, but
Yeah,
also,
typically they'll flag it and assign somebody to write a code change proposal.
okay. And then are you still like in the report still indicating retaining the amendment or indicating something else for that?
Yeah, well, we'd indicate, retain the amendment and then put the comment in
Gotcha.
that needs to be fixed.
Okay. Okay, and I think that's kind of what we kind of had and what Kevin had introduced for the motion that we're looking at right now. So I guess Kevin, do you want to, or I guess it was Laura, right? That you had
Yeah.
introduced. Yeah, excuse me. I don't know if that's still in line with what you're looking for and what we want to vote on for now, or if you want to retract it or alter it.
I'd like just to keep the motion, for now.
Right. Do you want to do a quick voice vote, and then if there's any dissenting folks, we can roll call. So all those in favor of retaining the amendment with the comments that we're assuming there's going to be a code change proposal to modify this in the future to section 507.2, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, thank you. And yeah, thanks again for discussion on this. I think there's a lot of work to do, obviously, and I think with a lot of new people and new brains in the mix, I think it's going to be good to revisit some of these sections where there's been stuff that's kind of been carried over from previous code cycles, and probably some additional vetting that needs to happen.
Next one's pretty easy, just a new section added to bring in language from NFP 82 on requirements for venting of waste or linen chutes.
Right, and yeah, it looks like staff had already checked for the 2024 edition of NFP 82. It's same requirements, it looks like. Does there need to be some formatting change because the exception language is like in line with the requirement right now?
There's not an exception on it.
The second sentence.
Yeah.
Oh, there is, okay.
And what is the base code and what's the new?
This is all state amendment.
Oh, okay.
This
So-
isn't present in the mechanical code at all.
Oh, okay.
This is in the building code also, I believe.
Yeah, I believe you're correct. And thanks for that reminder. I don't know if anyone had cross-checked this with any building code changes. And yeah, it has the reference there to section 713, not 13.7.
So this helps a mechanical designer that there is a building code required.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Let's
Oh.
see, chapter 7. I got a new computer the other day and they gave me a new edition of Adobe Acrobat and I hate it.
No.
I can't do anything.
Well, I think we can still have a motion because we can still discuss. So I'll make a motion to accept the amendment, in this case to section 514. Is that correct? Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
I'll second the motion.
All right. All right. Motion and second to retain changes, state amendment to add section, I guess now 514. Any discussion on this section? Okay. All those in favor of retaining the state amendment, please say aye.
I
Aye.
Any opposed? Right. Thank you. And then I was trying to find, Krista, the building code amendments, but it looks, since this section changed, I know the building code language references 515, so I'm assuming that'll get updated to 514 on the
Yeah,
building code side.
yeah, I'll coordinate with Dustin to get that done.
Okay, awesome. All right, made it through chapter 5.
Ooh.
And this is a long-standing exception that's in the building code, the fire code, and mechanical code. And this one I did double check the reference in the IFC and updated that.
I guess, was there, I forgot how we were handling references to other code. Are we still identifying them as international fire code and not Washington State fire code or international fire code with Washington amendments or anything? We don't
As
need.
far as I'm aware, we're still calling it the International Fire Code.
Okay.
Sometimes we have amendments, sometimes we don't, so it's just cleaner to.
Yeah, maybe just the energy code or something like that that we treat differently. Okay. Great. Any discussion on this section? This is, I guess, if we want to go back up to that, this section is kind of around the requirements for air within egress areas and the lengthy number of exceptions to allow for some cases of that.
There's a small grammar error there. Should say adds, wait, up. Go back up. Should say adds an A-N, no D. There you go.
As an.
Sorry.
Oh, in there. Okay.
No. I mean, it's a good set of exceptions because residential high rise, you do want to put in 100% outside air to pressurize that corridor. Some of that is going to leak under the door into the unit, but it's not intended to be ventilation, it's intended to be pressurization, so.
I do need to chime in and state that further in the mechanical code for ventilation purposes for R2 designations, 60% or more efficient ERVs are required. And so part of the venting strategy should not be undercutting doors and such.
True. Yeah, and 6.2 indicates that the units have to have independent conforming ventilation air, so be that an ERV or whatever.
Yeah, this is just primarily for smoke in a corridor, right? You want to ventilate with fresh air so that if there's a space, a tenant space that's providing the smoke, that's creating the smoke, it doesn't draft into that corridor, which then conflicts your occupants trying to escape the location. So it wants fresh air from outside driving in there, pushing in towards the tenant spaces. So, I mean, I like this. I'm good with this.
Yeah, it does. I'm good with this. Also just allows for some minimum ventilation going into the corridors.
Right.
All right. Cool. Any other discussion on this section? I mean, yeah, I would agree with the discourse here, and it's almost, yeah, like item 6 is almost not an exception. It's more of a clarification to the application, I would say. But yeah, so I don't know if anyone wants to offer a motion to retain this section, or if we want to look at other action. What was that? Sorry, was that you, Justin?
Correct, so moved.
Can you, Krista, can Justin offer motion? Sorry, Justin.
Motion to retain.
I'll second it.
Typically, if he's considered a ex officio member, ex officios can make motions, but
Okay.
yeah,
I'm
it's
good
a
with that.
little- Yeah.
All right. Motion and second to retain existing amendments to 601.2. Any additional discussion? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, the rationale that went with the original proposal was that this clarified that the requirements pertain to systems that serve multiple areas and not just a single area. I think the strike-through ones are changes that were made at the model code level this time rather than state amendment. And they're just red instead of blue, as they should be.
And I don't know, could you pull up the 2021 Washington?
The
language?
2021.
Yeah. I have it pulled up. It obviously reads differently. Is this?
So I'd point out that that first strikeout part up at the top, fired appliances shall not be installed within a plenum. That is now the final in blue. Now you've taken it away, so I can't see it. But
Yeah, I think the model code changes to really break out, like in the 2021, it's like all one paragraph without any subsections. I think everything is kind of moved into those subsections for 2024.
Did you want the model code or the?
I think, yeah, like there's a state amendment in that section, so that hopefully it's in here. I'm just looking on the ICC website version of the Washington Code. So 2.1, there you go.
Yeah, and then let me pull up. This is the.
So your secret working draft.
So 602. So it looks identical, but
So
you can see the.
yeah, like Ted said, fuel-fired appliances not installed within a plenum is moved to 602.1.3.
Right.
And then the previous state amendment for the air systems that serve multiple fire areas is added there.
Yeah, so this is the only portion that's the actual state amendment. The rest were changes between the 2021 and 2024 edition.
Was there, so looking, like just comparing it, was there like a change to the first subsection in the old language? I saw like it doesn't look like we had the framing cavities. I don't know if that was part of the model code previously.
Let's do it this way.
Yeah, it looks like there might have been an existing state amendment to have stricken that framing cavities item and make the last item mechanical equipment rooms.
Oh, man.
So I guess to hopefully clarify this, my understanding is that in what Krista has clipped in there for the existing 2021 state language for this section, the first sentence identifies plenums as being crawl spaces, areas above a ceiling or below the floor, attic spaces, and mechanical rooms, but not framing cavities as is in the model code. So I believe that must have been an existing state amendment to have stricken out framing cavities from being classified as a plenum. And then I think there, like you'd move the and before mechanical equipment
Right.
rooms. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that is my understanding of what is the existing amendment. So then I guess you would have that strike through in red or something for state amendments. All right. Okay. Thank you, Krista. Sorry.
Yeah, I have to make sure this is in the other one too.
Yeah. But I guess, okay. So hopefully that's
Hang on.
clear for
Oh,
everyone.
hang on. I have somebody at the door.
Okay. Thank you. I guess for TAG members or others, any discussion around this section? Sorry, I just kind of want to make sure we got the existing amendments captured, but does that all make sense to everyone?
Has anyone checked to see if the commercial energy code talks about not using plenums? I know the residential energy code says that you will not use the cavities as plenums, and it's specifically spelled out in the energy code itself. I am not a commercial energy code expert, however.
Gotcha. I am not sure about that, but yeah, I don't know if anyone wants to take a look at that, but it would definitely be good to have alignment on it.
Maybe add that to the comment section to remind someone to take a peek.
I'm sorry, Jonathan. What am I adding in the comment section?
To reference the energy commercial code for not using wall cavities and floor assemblies and such as plenum spaces. Actually, I was saying that I think the commercial code, I know the residential code strictly forbids it. So I don't know if the Washington State Energy Commercial Code does the same or not.
Yeah, that's in for 2021 it was in residential energy code R403.3.7.
R is residential.
Yeah, so just
Oh.
what Jonathan was talking about in terms of like where it's defined in the residential energy code for that. But I'm not sure if
And I
there's
don't know.
I know ceiling plenums are pretty common in commercial for like VAV systems.
Yep.
Yep, that was
Yeah,
all. I was just making sure that the two wouldn't conflict. I was just double checking just because I know it is forbidden in the residential. I just want to make sure that language was commingling, if that makes sense. That's all.
Nope. Thank you. Yeah, I don't see a similar provision in the commercial code right now. Okay. Thanks, Jonathan. All right, any other comments or anyone want to make a motion to retain and what we have for the state amendments, but kind of massaged into the new format for based on the model code?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I can second that.
All right. Motion and second to retain existing state amendments to section 602.1, excuse me. Any additional discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right.
So this allows limited use of gypsum board shafts in pressurization systems. It's another one that's been a long-standing amendment.
Yeah, so yeah, for stairwell or elevator pressurization supply, instead of providing a metal duct system, it's a pretty typical application to create a cavity behind a stairwell for this. Any discussion on this? All right, anyone want to offer a motion to retain this section?
I make a motion to retain the state amendment to section 603.5.1.
Second.
All right, motion and second. Any additional discussion? All right, so motion is to retain state amendment to 603.5.1. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, this is mostly from last year's code change. We started, as the note says, we started specifying a MERV rating in the 2012, and it got very complicated in the 2021 code as we increased the filter or the capacity for filtering all the exceptions that needed to be added into it. So 605.1 and 605.4 kind of go hand in hand.
All right, and is that it? Is there a model code change? Is it just like formatting or something? Or why is, or is that just moving exception, model code exception 1 to exception 3? Maybe.
Either that or sometimes Word, when it does automatic numbering, it does weird things.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. But yeah, I guess, yeah, anyone have anything to discuss for this section? Obviously it's a lot of new language that's just kind of become effective as of March, so hasn't been live for that long, but I don't know if anyone had any initial thoughts or anything to discuss for now, or this yeah, might be another good one to review further if there's additional adjustments that might be needed.
I can just say from the DOH side, the MERV 13 filters are something that Nancy, my predecessor on this tag, was in big support of, and it's something that we cite often in our our current guidance about requiring those filters to remove really small particles.
Yeah, this started last cycle with a requirement for MERV 13 based on the ASHRAE recommendations, one of the studies done, and it kind of went from there. And there were, when people said, well, what about this? Everything kind of got adjusted to try to make sure that we had something that could be handled by the system without too much pressure drop.
I can tell you from a manufacturing standpoint, we're moving everything to a MERV 13 on the supplier. Any supplier that comes into the envelope will have passed through a MERV 13. That's with our organization at Panasonic. However, I can tell you that MERV 13 is a more expensive application. And I'm always trying to use caution about moving to, because the builder has to manage the transaction value of his product. So every time we raise the price of a product that comes in, the builder has to raise the price of his product going out, so to speak. And it becomes, that's where we get kind of conflict between codes, builders, and home buyers. But at the end of the day, I'm a big supporter of MERV 13.
And I believe it was more as a capable of changing, so should have a capability and should not operate all the time. But when the outdoor air is bad, maybe if somebody can have a ability to change the filters.
Yeah, so I believe, Kristen, like the original language, there was that the outdoor, like the smoke or outdoor air quality provision, but I think that got superseded by some of these changes, is my understanding. So Shelley, I remember what you're talking about.
Right, because it kind of changed from just smoke to smoke and bacterial viral particles and things like that.
Mhm.
So you're talking about indoor air as well as the outdoor air.
Yep. Yeah, I think if let's see if it's in the first printing for 2021, but I believe that language got modified.
So again, from the manufacturer standpoint, it's a significant cost adder to put those kind of automated controls into the system. And then we run into the situation where, let's say we have bad outdoor air for 2 weeks. How long do we, it becomes an intermittent supply air strategy, or because if we shut it off altogether, then your indoor air becomes compromised as well. And now you've created a problem. These are some really difficult scenarios to manage from a manufacturer standpoint, because we have this monstrous variable, which is the occupant, who may determine that it's too expensive to run this, so he just puts it in standby and all sorts of stuff. So, and I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I think all of these need to put into effect. It's just we have to use caution when we start raising the price of a builder's product who is already struggling with a buyer who's seeing higher interest rates, who's seeing more expensive of everything, and try to make sure we do the best we can without bankrupting either one of those.
Again, this is the current code requirement.
Yeah, and I think this is fine, by the way. I'm just, when we start adding in more controls, it becomes more expensive and more problematic.
I want to agree with what you're just saying there. I want to start by saying I've been putting HEPA filters in every house we build for all incoming air since 2004. They're not cheap, But the big problem really with them is there's quite a few HEPA filters I've installed where nobody's gone back and changed the filter media. So 15 years later, they're still trying to, push air through the same old filter unit. So occupant behavior is more than just turning the switch on and off. It's often just a total failure to respect the system that they have. That being said, the HEPA filter is extremely effective at taking out forest fire smoke. And we've had more letters from our clients who just appreciate the fact that we did that for them. This is a tricky one because my personal preference is to exceed what this code requires, and yet I understand most builders can't do what I do. So the cost issue and the occupant issue become much more important.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, yeah, thanks for, all the feedback. I think it's all important, and there's obviously like a lot of balance issues that we need to look at here. And like Krista said, this got kind of included for the 2021 code, and there's obviously cost consideration that went along with those changes at that time. I guess one thing, Krista, I think we're missing exception 3 in 605.4. Yep, there it is. Okay, thank you. And it got moved to the other page. Okay.
Is there and I know this is way out of school for what we're doing here, but is there a way to cycle this kind of information back to a state program of education for homeowners, home buyers about this application? Because this truly is one of the biggest variables. We can talk about opening or closing a window, everybody gets that. But when it comes to identifying a filter within a system, it is a big problem. And really all it does, as Ted talked about, if they don't look at that filter for 2 or 3 years, it fails the overall system, which again has put the code system in a place where they have created a problem within the structure itself. So without any sort of education on enhancing this filtration strategy, we're going to wind up creating more conflict in the long term than we do in the short term. So, for example, Ted's group that buys Ted's houses, those are high performance buyers of homes. But when we get entry level, and what this is going to affect is the entry level homes where it's a lowest cost transaction, that entry level homeowner may or may not understand all the particulars of how his house works. And this is a critical one for the appliances in that house.
This is the commercial code requirement, though. This is not for
All right.
single family.
I'm sorry. I get off my soapbox. Commercial should know better.
But yeah, at the same time, like if you have like a R2 or something like that with a bunch of affordable housing apartments or something like that, this would still be included for that. So like those occupants or those building operators would still be subject to meeting these.
I'm so sorry. I've just made a speech that was unnecessary.
No, I think it's good context. And there is in 605.1 there is the requirement that the filter shall be installed in an approved convenient location.
Well, and actually, I think a reason I got onto that was because it talked about occupiable spaces in groups A, B, E, M, and R, and I occupancies.
Sure.
R being residential. So, my bad.
It does bring up sorry, go ahead.
John.
My only question was, and I believe it's becoming more common to see more of these ERVs and HRVs coming out with the higher filtrations. And again, the commercial ventilation code does require that an ERV or HRV be installed. And so I do think you're going to see more of these filtration units already aligning with products they're putting in. They just have to specify maybe the correct products at the time.
Yeah,
or
so
the box.
California currently already requires all supply air strategies to have a MERV 13. So, which is one of the reasons we moved to that with all of our products now on supply air. Actually, I take it back. We have one unit that's not a MERV 13, but it's actually moving to the MERV 13.
I do think the MERV 13s are becoming more common all over the country. I do design all over the country and work with builders and HVAC installers all over the country. And I think the price is starting to come down on them. So hopefully we can use even more of them and make them even more common and get that price down further just by supply and demand.
Well, at the manufacturer level, the price has come down. But if you go to your and I can't speak for all of our distributors, our wholesale distributors, but I know at the retail level, you go there and you'll still see price breaks on the MERV values or the FRS values, which leads the uneducated buyer to going with less. But still, but you're right, Ted. The prices are coming down. When we launched our most recent application, the price was exactly the same for a MERV 13 as it was a MERV 8, and we just defaulted to the MERV 13.
Mhm.
All right, so far, I don't think I've heard any negative discussion on the topic. So maybe I'll go out on a limb here and just say, we make a motion to approve this and move on to the next conversation, unless somebody has a reason why we shouldn't. I haven't heard anybody speak up to a no on this just yet. I'm just encouraging the moving along for time's sake kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I'm with you.
All right,
I'll
thanks.
second that motion.
All right, thank you. Motion
Are
a
we
second.
talking about both 605.1 and 605.4 or just 605.1?
Well, as was
I'd be-
pointed out, they go together.
I'd be willing to include in the motion to accept both 605.1 as well as 605.4.
All right. Laura, I think you seconded that. Is that good with you?
I'll second the
second.
motion.
Yes.
Or was it Ally? Sorry. Missed who
Sorry, I think it
seconded.
was Ally. I jumped
Okay.
in there.
No worries. All right. Motion and second to retain the state amendments for 605.1 and 605.4. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. All right, but yeah, excellent discussion. Appreciate it. And yeah, I think that's why we're here, is to get feedback from all these diverse group of people here. So thank you. All right,
Okay,
Krista.
so 606.2.1, we added an exception for DOAS systems not requiring smoke detectors if the circulated.
All right. Any discussion on this one? Or does someone want to offer a motion to retain it?
So moved.
I did want to interject. Both Ian and I were going to drop at 12:30. Does that retain quorum?
Yeah, I think thanks, Kevin. I think I
Okay.
was thinking about looking at that, but so yeah, feel free to drop, and then I think we'll just need to do a quick count.
Yeah, we should still have a quorum. We have 12 voting members, so
Yeah, I
going
noticed.
down to 10 still works.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. And thanks everyone for joining. Okay, so motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. So any further discussion on this section? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of retaining the state amendment for 606.2.1, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Thank you.
Uh, 606.2.2, they just added some clarification on controls required for fan-powered terminal units.
And I think there might be some formatting stuff going on here. I think exception 3 ends after 606.2.1, and then in all cases is like a new paragraph outside of the exceptions. Or is it, Kristen, do you know if it's under the exception? It's kind of weird in the version I'm looking at.
Was that stuck out?
What was that, Shailesh? Was there, did you say is there something struck out from there?
That particular line that you had just your cursor. Yeah.
That's still in 2021
Oh.
Washington, as far as I can tell.
Okay. Six oh six two.
Yeah, where is it?
606.2.2.
Yeah, still there.
Oh, yeah, it does need to be a new paragraph.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I think that's how it looks. So any discussion for this section, or you want to move to retain?
Is that shut down one word or?
It depends on who you ask.
I'll make a motion to retain the existing state amendment for section 606.2.2.
I would second that.
All right. Motion and second to retain the section. Any further discussion here? Maybe some editorial review needed, but all right. All those in
I'll
favor?
do a search through the IMC and see what form of shutdown they prefer.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of retaining the state amendment to 606.2.2?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oops, sorry. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you.
And Krista, in the IMC, it's one word.
Okay.
Thanks, Janice.
Okay, so this is a new section added to correlate smoke control with the exceptions in 601.2.
And yeah, I think like both 606.2.4 and 606.2.5 are mirrored requirements for high rise and other than high rise. All right. Any discussion for these two sections at the moment? Want to offer a motion to retain them for now?
I'll make the motion that we retain both 606.2.4 and 606.2.5.
Okay.
Second.
I can second that motion.
All right. Thank you. Motion is second. Any additional discussion for these two sections? Okay. All those in favor of retaining state amendments to 606.2.4 and 606.2.5, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right.
Okay, so this is a fairly new amendment. That allows for flexible connections when air handling equipment is outside or when connecting to a diffuser in the same room.
I think grill is misspelled.
Add an extra E.
Yeah. Little gotta get off of Memorial Day mindset, maybe. And really like the change for 3.2 is to just add those different classifications of air terminals. So, all right. Any additional discussion for this section? Or anyone want to offer a motion to retain?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All right. Motion is second to retain state amendments for this section. Any additional discussion? All right. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye to retain state amendments to 607.5.2.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, so this one had the same rationale. And grill is actually spelled correctly here.
Courses and yeah, I guess this one, I mean, obviously this is for fire petitions versus fire barriers in the past, the section before.
Yeah.
And it does add the fully ducted requirement to the HVAC systems. as well. Okay, but yeah, any additional discussion as people are looking at this for the section for the current state amendment?
So under 3.1, where the duct shall not exceed 100 square inches, are we saying here that anything less than 100 square inches does not require?
So my understanding is that's all under the exception to allow to not use fire dampers.
Fire damper.
So if you're above 100 square inches, then you would meet the requirements of exception 3.1. So it would then require a fire damper for that penetration.
Yeah, you'd have to meet all of those exceptions or
All the requirements.
0.16
Right.
to not have it.
Mhm. But yeah, like you don't have to meet exception 1, 2, 3, and 4. It would be 1, 2, 3, or 4. Here.
I think this looks good, and I can make a motion to retain this existing state amendment for section 607.5.3.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion is second. Any further discussion? All right. Hearing none, all those in favor of retaining state amendment to 607.5.3, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? I think that's it for chapter 6. So now we're getting close to the end. All right, chapter 9.
Okay, so this was a new amendment brought in, or both of these sections brought in last time. It was originally just for emergency power, and through discussion, it got expanded out into both emergency and optional standby power systems, just to have some correlating requirements with the IBC, and making sure that all the pertinent NFPA standards are provided.
So I'm noticing under 915.3.2, the air outlets, number 2, radiator cooling outlet should be located on the exterior of the building. Is this only referring to units that are actually installed inside the building? The standby generators are what I'm most familiar with, emergency power systems that are on the outside of the building, and those radiator cooling outlets are never 2 feet above grade. They're basically at grade or within, they'll be however tall the unit is at one end of the unit.
And this is for those required emergency power systems for things like hospitals, fire stations, all those
Exactly.
deemed essential facilities.
So I've built a number of medical facilities and restaurants that had standby power, and those generators, they're a installed package that installs on a slab on grade, and the radiator cooling outlet is the height of the generator unit typically, and it goes from grade to whatever the height of the unit is, 3 feet or 4 feet or whatever, depending on how many kilowatts you're talking about.
Well, in downtown area, it is in the basement sometimes.
Yeah, and obviously, yeah, Seattle has their own provisions for some of those. And I guess one clarification would be that, as Krista mentioned, like this is pertaining to emergency and legally required power systems. So standby would technically not need to follow this, is my understanding. And then so 915.4 is for optional standby, but I think the requirement here is the same, looks like, or almost the same for combustion at least, but not for the radiator cooling output.
So if you're piping that radiator cooling outlet to the outside from an inside unit, it makes sense to, get it 2 feet above grade. Maybe. I still even question that. But for these standby units that are, again, they just sit on a slab outside the building. They just don't build them like that. So we're asking in some cases for something that doesn't exist or that would be very awkward to provide.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess Ted, to your point, like potentially maybe there's a good amendment to propose on clarifying that this is for installations within a building.
Yeah, unfortunately, Eric isn't with us today because he was the
He was the
proponent on
author
the
of
meeting.
this one. Yeah, I'll let him know. But yeah, no, I think that's, yeah, Ted, I think it makes sense to help clarify this, and noting that where you have like a genset installed outside, you wouldn't necessarily need to meet these or some of these.
Can we see the very bottom of the 915.4? Is there more on the next? No, that is the end of it.
That
Okay.
is it, that's it.
So, yeah, that one doesn't have the 2 foot above grade requirement. But again, even the other one, I'm aware of buildings that are required to have standby power that use the same kind of system that sits on the ground.
Yeah, I think the difference between the two is meeting NFPA 110, and I don't know what that standard has within it. I have it noted.
The optional one says it can be installed outside, but the non-optional one says doesn't have such language in it.
Yeah. That one doesn't, it's just standby power.
So now that we're back to the section, if you actually read their intakes, it does talk about being available in an exterior space on the 915.4.1, but it does not use that same language on 9.5.3.1.
When you're referring to the statement that it can be located within an open or enclosed parking garage.
Yeah, it was talking about it could be located within an open or enclosed area, and the other one doesn't mention such differences. So I think that's what Ted's concern is that this doesn't mention that it can be installed outside or something like that.
Yeah, and I guess I would say that there's some additional like IBC provisions for the location of emergency power systems within a building that help define like it needs to be in a rated room and some other things around that is my understanding. So. But yeah, if there's some more discussion on this, I think we could look at, as we've talked about for past sections, if there's potential amendments that would help clarify the requirements here and align it with what's in the building code or that any of these NFPA sections, then yeah, we could introduce that as future amendments potentially and note it in our comments here.
So we would approve these amendments, but recommend that some changes be developed to clarify?
Yeah, and I would say like if we do want to make some amendments, like obviously bringing in some of the proponents of the proposal that was introduced in 2021, and also just making sure we're doing a thorough check of kind of what the intent was and how this is applied in relation to other code requirements and other in the building code or others. But yeah, that would be my suggestion on a path to look at this. So again, we don't kind of stall out here.
Is some of this also due to possible sound issues?
My understanding is that this was really driven to make sure these systems are kind of aligning with the NFPA sections that are mentioned. And I think for the emergency and legally required systems, having the 2-foot above grade is to provide additional means of ensuring there's no blockage to the outlet.
Yeah, and you know, as it does with the energy code sometimes too, it may necessarily not be limiting the location when you fully read the code out. The first section just says it must be installed to the fire code requirements that are listed there. And then these other parts are part of that. And usually it's like, if you have this, like if you have an air intake, then it must meet this requirement. But if you're already being installed outdoors, you don't typically have an air intake on the building that you wouldn't mention it. Does that make sense? And sometimes it happens that way. So without a full in-depth reading of those 3 NFPAs, it just may be that. You could still probably put it on the outside and it's not referencing these sections because you don't have a ducted system for that. So I'm good with the way that it reads. I'm just saying that we should definitely make sure we reference those other ones to make sure that's what's going on, that it is not a location restriction.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So, okay. So yeah, I don't know if any other discussion, if we want to make a motion or if we've tabled other sections in the past, if we want to try to bring this up for additional review at the next meeting or something like that, if that's what folks would like to do, but open to what the members would like to do here.
I would be happy to. I actually have a meeting with a lot of fire marshals over the next 2 weeks. I could bring this up with multiple of those guys and see what they say.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I'm gonna note you down to help report back.
The only caveat being that we need to report back to the MVPE committee by the 7th is our deadline. So
okay.
I will get a hold of them much faster. How's that? I'm going to steal a snippet of the screen here so I can just send it to them as we speak. All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So are we looking at tabling this one, or do we and just move on to the next section, or does anyone want to make a motion to retain it for today?
I'll make a motion to table it, and this would table 915.3 and 915.4 until Jonathan gets back with clearer definition of NFPA 70, 110, and 111.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second that since I'm now responsible for it.
All right. Motion and second to table this for additional discussion. Keeping in mind what Krista mentioned regarding report date. Any additional discussion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. All right. We got 3 minutes left. I think we have like half a dozen more sections to look at. Krista, do we need to make a motion to extend? Or can we
We
just
can either make a motion to extend or just
check
call
with
it a
everyone?
day.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, I don't know what everyone's commitments are. Or if we obviously have the model code changes to review as well. So I think we'll still need to have another meeting next week to meet our deadline.
I have to jump off at 1.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Any suggestions?
Yeah, if we have to have more meetings, it makes sense to just go to the next one.
Okay. All right, agreed. Okay, so we'll give you back a couple minutes, but when we reconvene, we'll be looking at Chapter 10 and and as well as the 2024 IMC model code changes. So please, yeah, take a look at those prior to the meeting and look forward to talking with everyone then. And I think Krista/Annette will be reaching out to confirm the date for the next meeting, and that will be next week, I'm assuming.
Yep, hopefully early on next week.
All right. Great. All right.
Nice work,
Thanks.
everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Excellent.
everyone.
Happy
Thanks,
Friday.
everyone.
Have a great weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.